Hey, I'm here with my friend Jarvis from Patreon. We've worked together on and off for the past year, and we went to VidCon for his first time, and it was my fourth time. So I just wanted to talk about basically our different VidCon experiences and how it's really different for somebody going for the first time compared to how somebody who went for the fourth time. I'm also going to bring in a friend who's been to all 8 VidCons. So here we go. I remember my first time at VidCon, and it was just like everything was awesome and brand new, and everything was, I was taking it all in. Kind of was that how you were feeling, or?
Yeah, definitely. There was like a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Since we were there with work, we were like on all 3 floors, like the entire conference, and then we were like going to and from parties. So it felt like very exhausting. I definitely had to like duck into my hotel a bit to like recharge before going back out. For the most part, it was manageable, but a little bit overwhelming at times.
What was your favorite part? Because I know my first year, it was like a lot of the panels and the people, like kind of, you had an industry pass, so you had even more than I've had.
I feel like I had a non-traditional first VidCon experience,
for sure.
to be honest. Like,
and you were able to get into all the parties on your first time around.
So that was like, I think one of the big takeaways for me, or one of the big highlights, was just the community feel that I got, like feeling like, oh, this is a community, you know, because it's very easy to not feel connected to that community as a viewer, because prior to, very recently, I was just like viewing, and so it was cool to see that digital space sort of translated into the real world. The other thing that was my favorite was just bonding with the team. And then the last thing was just like meeting these creators who have been really inspiring to me, or whose content I've enjoyed over the years, and finally being able to like be like, oh yeah, this is like a real person who's like out and in the world.
One of my absolute favorite things about this year's VidCon was the Secret Show, which you weren't able to go to.
I wasn't there,
but I played in the 6th annual Secret Show, which is basically a time, so a few of my friends didn't get into the open mic 6 years ago, and so they're like, let's start our own concert. And so I was, but I got to play in this year's one, played a couple originals and did a cover, and it went really well, and I made other people sing along. And plug for the Patreon, if you support me on Patreon for $1, I'll put that up there, and you can see it. So he's a proud, he's giving me $5 whole a month.
Don't sell me out.
Okay, all right. Follow Jarvis on Twitter. At Jarvis. The space is always evolving, and I usually feel like I've kind of heard every topic, but at least the ones that I care about the most. Was the topics that you were hearing in the panels, was that like you were taking it all in and it was like so cool to hear, or was that kind of something you already got?
So a lot of the stuff was kind of repackaged common like sense, but hearing it from like a person of like someone who has gone out and like put this advice into practice, I think carried a lot of weight. Like, the creator or creating for YouTube 101 panel with like Nick Jenkins from Crash Course, like that was a good example of one that's like nothing that was said there was particularly like new, but hearing it in that venue made it resonate with me more. There was also a good mix of, especially from the industry side, some of the newer trends that are emerging, like within the community. One thing that comes to mind is like Facebook video. Like Facebook's making a lot of huge investments there, and it was clear from VidCon that a lot of people are now taking notice.
They're even starting like advertisements and monetization.
Which is kind of like the final like piece of the puzzle, and you had like a lot of creators, or at least a couple of creators from like the panel that Heather, who works at Patreon, was on. Like this person primarily posts a Facebook video. They're huge, and they get millions and millions of views, and that's it's super interesting to see these like emerging platforms, because YouTube, like Hank Green says, is somewhat of a dictatorship.
Exactly. That was definitely one of my favorite panels too. So this VidCon, Jarvis has been a little inspired to start doing his own stuff. So do you want to talk about like how you were inspired like just go into that?
So funny question. I went to this Creator 101 panel. I went to all the panels, and I was kind of like, I had 2 goals at VidCon. One was like I want to make sure I take back some of the like industry trends that I'm saying for like Patreon strategy at large. Like I worked on this project that is very similar to like an Instagram stories or like a Snapchat stories for Patreon. So I wanted to make sure I was doing my due diligence there. My like side goal was to like learn as much as I could about creating, and just as someone who's like sat on the sidelines for a lot of years. So I just by hearing it enough times, like Boogie had a thing at the creator keynote where he was talking about like if I can do it, you can do it. Like everyone's voice deserves to be heard. Like I was like, okay, you know what? I'm like gonna like start making things and putting them on YouTube. And so I started up my channel. And like posted my first video. I didn't really start my channel. My channel's 10 years old. It has 2 videos on it, but they're like
Pokemon dance videos.
It's like a High School Musical dance video and like a Japanese meme, and they both have like 60,000 views. And it was like my like something to live up to, I guess. Like this weird thing about my YouTube account.
Was there anything like specific that gave you an inspiration?
Yeah. So so in addition to like Nick Jenkins's thing, there was this #YouTube Black panel with a lot of the like Black YouTubers, and one thing that like Nathan Zed said that resonated with me was like I think Wheezy Waiter was in the audience, and he like pointed at Wheezy Waiter and was like the first couple of years of my videos were just copying this guy, and I was like, yeah, I mean like that's okay to do. I think a lot of you can get in your head about creating things and being like, I'm not bringing anything original to the table, so I need to come with like an original format, like the best camera and like all this, and kind of just getting over each of those like little humps, winning all those like little battles finally got me over the finish line to like putting something out.
Yeah, you just do it. Right?
Yeah, just do it. Yeah, Nike.
All right, so I was kind of just there at VidCon mostly to see friends. If I didn't have a bunch of friends going there, I wouldn't have gone. My friend Nick and I skipped out on Saturday to go see a Switchfoot concert. So it was kind of old to me, and I have a friend Kyle Marshall who's been making videos for like 7 years, and I figured that I'd bring him on just to like tell us like what his experience is, because he's been to all 8 VidCons. So Kyle, was that kind of similar for you, that you've like seen everything already, or what were the new things that you were getting out of this year's VidCon?
This year was interesting because I think the last couple years for sure, that was my only goal, was to go there, see friends, enjoy the concerts, just being in that kind of bubble of online video that I appreciate going to every year. This year, I had a very specific goal because I went very clearly to do networking, to meet new people, and to try and push myself out of my comfort zone. So while it was still like, yeah, I want to see my friends, like I want to hang out, but at the same time, I'm being very, very specific in my intentions, where I'm handing out business cards, I'm telling people about what I do, and really trying to build that up a little bit. So this was a different VidCon for me because my motives were different.
So Kyle, what type of advice would you give to young Jarvis here, who's only been to 1 VidCon and is just now starting his YouTube career? And you've been making videos for like 7 years. I've been making videos. Like I've been on since 2008, but only consistently since like 2013. So what kind of like advisement would you give to Jarvis?
Try and put yourself back into the con mentality. And what I mean by that is that it's so easy for yourself to be inspired after you leave VidCon. You know, you see the panels, you see the creator keynote, you're surrounded by all these like-minded people, and you go back home, you're like, yeah, I'm going to create this video, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to be this like amazing creator. And then kind of the reality sets in a little bit, where you do this cool thing, or you try and do a cool thing, and it maybe doesn't go exactly like you planned, or you're trying to make the video that you think is going to be the game changer on the platform, and it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I think it's easy then to be disillusioned and be like, well, then I'm going to stop doing it because I just don't want to do it anymore. And I think the hard part is to be like, no, I'm going to continue making stuff. I'm going to continue putting it out there. I'm going to continue to be a creator, even though I'm not surrounded by all this positivity in myself. That's what I've always found, I guess, for the last few years, which is like that high that you're on lasts for like a good 2 to 4 weeks, and then you have to keep yourself inspired after the fact.
Are there any like last things that you kind of taken from VidCon that you want to talk about, or is that about it?
You kind of said it in the intro. Like, I have a very different outlook in many ways because I have been to every single VidCon. So I started in the bottom of this random hotel in LA, and there was, I forget, the first year there was like 1,200 people or something. Like, it was super, super tiny. Like, you could have probably talked to every single person that went to that first VidCon. To now where it's like thousands upon thousands of people. And I think from the outside, and definitely if you look at some of the mainstream media, if you want to put it that way, reporting, it's like, it's so big, and like, look at all these big brands, and like, people make millions of dollars. But the core of YouTube, I really do feel, is still those small, medium, like semi-large people who have this dedicated following, who are doing it because they're passionate about it and are trying new and different things and creating this really interesting atmosphere in the space. It is only about, what, online videos about 10 years old, 11 years old. I think there's so much more room for growth. And I think that's what invigorates me a whole lot, which is, yes, it's gotten bigger. Yes, it's gotten louder. But if you only focus on that outward sheen, you kind of miss the cool, interesting, unique creators that are all around us if you just stop to look for a little bit.
Dude, I so agree with that. Even though everything's getting louder and bigger and oversaturated, there's still communities within communities, and that's why I love small YouTube so much. So even though Jarvis over here, who might want to be bigger and have a good fan base, he knows that like he's just here to cultivate a community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what is the coolest part to YouTube for me, and I hope the best for you with your new channel.
Thanks.
So,
I feel the same way, by the way, about cultivating community. Like, it's like even if 100 people watch a video, that's like 100 real people, and that's like there's something to be celebrated about that.
All right, thank you for watching. Thank you, Kyle and Jarvis, for joining me on. You can follow Jarvis at Jarvis. He has that. I'll link Kyle's channel and his Twitter in the bio, and go subscribe to both of these guys on YouTube. I'll put the links below. And if you want to support me on Patreon, also Kyle has a Patreon, and Jarvis works at Patreon, so help us all out.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.